Hello, you beautiful person. My name is Vera V, and welcome to the 28th episode of my podcast, Stories by Vera V. I'm so incredibly excited to have you here. For this episode, I'll be talking about slowing down. Slow down, just keep moving. Interesting stories by interesting people. Stories by Vera V. Before we go any further, though, I would just like to remind you that my upload days for this podcast are Mondays and Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And before we get into the contents of this episode, I just have one favor to ask. Please leave my podcast a rating and or a review. Preferably both. I wouldn't mind that at all. For if you're listening to it on Spotify or an Apple Podcasts, on Spotify it's at the very top, leave it 5 stars. On Apple Podcasts it's at the very bottom, leave it 5 stars as well. Why not? I'm just joking. Whatever you think is best. I want to know your input. All right, so regarding this podcast episode, though, I'm a little bit out of practice, kind of. I missed last week's individual episode, and I'll get into it today. What inspired this one, slow down, just keep moving, is I think it's my new motto for this period of my life. Slow down, just keep moving. And the event that struck the chord in my brain to start generating, what accent was this? I don't know. To start generating the idea of it is, I think I went downstairs once at some point, living in a house. I don't know, going downstairs. How relatable. And I think my dad told me, he was like, Vera, your lifestyle has changed. Like you don't have such a fast-paced lifestyle anymore. And I thought about it for a second and I was like, yeah, I don't. What's very interesting is that 6 months ago, when I did have the fast-paced lifestyle, that comment that you don't have such a fast-paced lifestyle, it would have offended me. And I would have been offended. And I was like, and I would have automatically perceived myself to be lazy. But the 2 days ago or 3 days ago that it happened, I just kind of pondered on it. And I started thinking about what it meant. And I came to the conclusion that that's not necessarily a bad thing. And that is growth, ladies and gentlemen. Because 6 months ago, well, if you would have told me that, I would have been deeply offended. My ego would have been hurt. My ego would have been in shambles that you thought that I was lazy. But I don't think being slow or having a slow lifestyle is equivalent to being lazy. This is growth. This is character development. I'm just so excited to be growing up and for my mindset to be evolving. I'm also filming on a new camera, which is really fun. So if you're watching this as a video cast, hi, say hello to camera. Hello. Anyway, I'm very excited about this. And so what I think a slower lifestyle entails is, I'll just give you an example of last year, because I was thinking about it a lot, right? I started my Instagram account at Very Nothing on values of individualism and self-development. Those are still the values that I hold, and I think I'll continue to hold them for the rest of my life. Individualism and self-development, right? I think when I started that account, that was April 2021 or so, my emphasis was definitely on self-development. It was. Because thinking back to last year when I was in junior high school, and by the way, I've graduated now, hence the slowing down of my lifestyle. But last year, oh golly gosh goodness. Last year, I remember I would wake up at like 5 a.m. or so, right? And that's when, I think it was a month in of starting my account. So I've had this journey for a while. I just started documenting it fairly recently. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and I'd play 2 hours of piano practice. 2 hours of piano practice before school, right? Then I'd go to school. I'd come back home. I'd finish all my homework in school. And last year was a little bit different because I had school 2 times a week. Everything else was online, which was honestly quite a treat. It was. Because it allowed me to allocate so much of my time to self-development. But point is, I would do that. And now thinking about my current lifestyle upon graduating high school, I do have all this free time now and I have so much of it. But I can't imagine waking up at 5 a.m. on 5 hours of sleep and playing piano for 2 hours. You know what I mean? But, do not mistake me. I was considerate and I played on my keyboard instead of the piano that I have downstairs because I think if I started playing on Sam, that's my piano's name, Samuel. If I started playing on Samuel, my family, girl, I would not be playing for much longer. Let me just tell you that. I would not be playing for much longer. They're patient with me and I am so incredibly grateful for that. But sis, 5 a.m. is a little bit early for everyone, except my dad because he wakes up at 5:20. He wouldn't care. Everyone else, though, yeah, not the option. But now my routine's a little bit different. And I think the biggest change that I guess sparked the slowness in my lifestyle is definitely graduating high school. And I was thinking about this. This is turning into a very like ponderous atmosphere vibe sort of episode. I was thinking about events and the consequences of them. And I've been wanting to graduate high school since I was maybe 15 or 16 years old, which is very early, right? In the United States, you graduate at 18. 15, so for what, 2 years, I've been wanting to graduate. And now that I've done it, it's a little bit different. I don't regret my decision anymore. Listen, if I'm just being honest with you, it is, I think, the best decision I could have made for myself. But at the same time, it's different. It's existential. You know what I mean? My identity for the past 11 and a half years of my life has been student. I've been a student, an active student. And now I can self-educate myself all I want, but I'm not a student in a public institution anymore. I'm not a student in a public educational institution anymore. And that's different. So when I graduated, I think over a month ago, so 5 or 6 weeks ago. I did regret my decision. Not as soon as it happened, because as soon as it happened, I was the happiest I've ever been, probably for like 2 weeks. And then I was like, oh, okay, so this is it. Like, I see my friends on the weekends because they have school. I see my family also on the weekends and hang out with them because they have work. And I'm just here kind of spending my days away. You know what I mean? That was my thought process. But I think what it comes down to regarding the graduating school thing is I've realized that for me, I need a place to go to. I just do. I think if you're listening to this, you can probably relate. I am such a homebody and I love staying at home and I love doing my own thing, but I also need a consistent place to go to. So this is something I'm working on. My lifestyle right now, it's not perfect. It wasn't perfect way back when. It's not perfect now, and that's fine. I think what's most important for me that I've discovered is just patience is a virtue. And I have a podcast episode on this if you want to listen. Patience is a virtue. It's just so important to have patience for yourself while you figure things out. And right now, that's exactly what I'm doing. Because upon graduating high school, right, the slowness of my lifestyle, that was my intent all along. There's this song by Taylor Swift and Phoebe Bridgers, nothing new. It's like, will you still love me while I'm nothing new, or something like that. And there's this famous line. How come I'm not quoting it, I'm just paraphrasing. But it's something along the lines, that's a pun, of how come I knew everything at 18 and nothing at 22? How come I know everything at 18, nothing 22? And I was thinking about this and it just hit me. Because I think at 18, which is basically my age, right? But right now I'm really living out my 22 days because I feel like I know nothing sometimes. So point is, when you're 18, you graduate high school, right? And most people, they go to college, at least here. My surroundings, my little bubble. Most people go to college and they feel like they know exactly what they're doing because they're going to study. They're extending their educational endeavors, their educational career. They know their major, they know what they're going to be doing after, or they have some ideas. But at 22 is when you graduate from university. And I think that puts a person in a similar position as I am in right now. Because I've graduated high school and I don't plan on going to university. So you see the equivalence? Do you see the correlation? I do. So right now I'm kind of in the midst of an existential crisis. But my lifestyle's slowing down, and what can I do about it? Accept it with open arms. And regarding the slowness, let's talk about it a little bit more logistically. So I actually have an example of it. I have my handy little dandy phone here. I remember I did an issue for my school's newspaper in September or so. And I got interviewed, right? And it was about my lifestyle. The issue is about me seizing the day, carpe diem, which is really funny. I like that. And so I gave them the schedule that I would have every day. So let's read it aloud. 6 a.m. would be wake up. 6:30 a.m. go to the gym before school. 8 a.m. social media work and breakfast, which is like posting stories. I still do that. 10:45 a.m. school, finishing homework before classes end. 2:30 p.m. tennis game. 7 p.m. get home, dinner. 9:30 p.m. piano practice. 11 p.m. singing practice. 12 a.m. lights out. Is that not crazy? I was sleeping 6 hours a day, and that's actually fine. I think it's fine to sleep 6 hours a day when, you love what you do. But now I get a full 7, at least 8. And my schedule looks a lot different. It's so much more free. Like I wake up at 6 a.m. every day pretty much, except, today, because I just really needed to sleep after yesterday. I'm working on my first song, but we're shooting the music video, and, it's a lot of work. I wake up at 6 a.m., And it's very, gosh, it's not perfect in any way, I'm telling you, but it's like, it's very free. It reminds me of like a person who's just like, shoo, 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 shoo. That's how it is right now. It's just slower. So from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. or so, or 2 p.m., I work. And that's not 100% efficiently. I do get distracted and go on my phone sometimes, if I'm being candid with you. That's the way it is. I definitely have room for improvement, and I plan on improving. One step at a time. Hold me accountable, please. Hold me accountable, please. And then from 2 p.m. to about 6 p.m. or so, I do music practice. That's also not 100% efficient. A lot of the days recently, I've been missing out on that. Literally missing practice. I'm not proud of. My lifestyle's not perfect, as I've said. And then after dinner, I just kind of have like relaxed me time, more like catch-up time. You know what I mean? But I was thinking about myself in the past when I did have this fast-paced lifestyle. And I was not unhappy in any way. I loved that, and I loved every second of it. And I look at my old stories, and people would be like, who motivates you every day? And I'd be like, me. Reaching my full potential motivates me every day. And that sounds like it's about drive, it's about power, we stay hungry, we devour sort of thing, but that's exactly what it was. That is what motivated me. Then people would ask, who's your biggest inspiration? I would say me. The idea of me being the best version of myself inspires me. And it sounds like it's like corny, cheesy, like, what are you saying? You know what I mean? But that's exactly what it was. I believed in that. And I loved when my schedule was fast, and it was just like this. I got so much done every single day. So much. That's not to say that I wasn't lazy or I procrastinated, but I think also when we think about the past, and this is important, we tend to glamorize it and romanticize it and kind of miss all the points that we didn't feel too great in, you know? You just look at the big old, great, fabulous, sparkling image of it instead of the thing as a whole. So right now, obviously I can't look at it objectively anymore. But from what I remember, I did procrastinate some, but mostly I went on social media just to post. And that was the standard for myself. It was literal, the standard that I held for myself was literal perfection. Perfection. No Netflix, no movies, no nothing. Go on social media just to post, or when you're looking for sound or whatever, you know, and everything else, you maximize your time 100%. I texted nobody throughout my day. Nobody. I mean, when people would text me, I'd respond. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't hold conversations online because I'm like, this is a waste of my time. I don't like texting. I would rather play piano or read a book. Actually, I didn't read back then. That's a lie. I'd rather play piano or sing, you know, whatever it is that I was doing. And think about this now, it's kind of crazy. But I think the biggest difference between past me and current me is back then, a lot of what I did was driven by restlessness, sort of, which transferred into guilt. And listen, if I've realized one thing in 2022 upon graduating high school is that I don't want to go through my life feeling guilty for anything. I don't want to do that. And this isn't about guilt about being a good person or not, because I know I'm a good person. It's a guilt about maximizing time. I've talked about this in my previous podcast episodes, but I literally grew up on the phrase, don't waste time. Stop wasting your time. That's it. I think if you were to put me, please don't, even don't, just don't. But if you were to put me in a state of, what's it called? Hypnosis, right? And just make me say the thing that's most true to my childhood or my upbringing, it'd be like, don't waste time. I think that's what would come out of my mouth. Or individuals about self-development. Because, I mean, we've established that those are my core values. But back then, I was driven by guilt. And I felt guilty for, listen, I think it's going to sound kind of controversial in that way. But I think it's fine to feel restless or guilty if you know you're wasting your time. Like if you're scrolling on TikTok and you're like, man, this doesn't feel good. Like I know I should be doing something else. That's fine because you're literally wasting your time. That's exactly what it is. It's a mindless activity, right? But back then I would even feel guilty and I'd be thinking about all the things I could be doing to self-develop or whatnot when I would spend time with my family, when I'd be with my friends. And I didn't even spend that much time with my friends at all. So it's probably with my family. Now I do a lot more. Back, yeah, I don't think last year I spent any time with my friends, really. Except maybe towards the end of it, like summertime, yeah. But during the school year, I can't recall that at all. Because I don't think I did. And I just feel guilty. We were, let's say, my sisters and I remember this one day. My sisters and I planned to go to the beach after lunch, right? And back then, it was May, April. I had a very stacked schedule. So May, April 2021, stacked schedule, right? My schedule's super busy. I'm very busy. Like, guys, I'm very busy. I can't hang out. I'm very busy. And I was thinking about canceling that little adventure with my sisters, who I love more than anybody in the world, because they're my family. I love my family more than literally, I love my family, period. I'm a family girl. I love my family. They're the best people to ever exist. Literally. My bestest friends. Bestest is not a word. And I value grammar, and I value utilizing a proper lexicon, which the phrase in and of itself makes no sense. So when I say bestest, that's how you know I really mean it. Bestest friends. And back then, we were planning it at night, right? The day before, I was thinking like, I don't think I can go, guys, because I have so much to get done. I still need to do my driving practice and blah, blah, blah. Whatever. I just need to get so much done. I can't really do it. Which driving practice, no, that was not a thing. I didn't start driving until July. Sorry. Is that called discrepancies? I don't know. I'm going to have to define that word later on. Okay, sorry. Why don't I just do it now? Fun fact about me is sometimes words come to my head and I know what they mean, but I don't. So I just say, define discrepancies. A lack of compatibility, similarity. Okay, that's not it. So point is, my head would just be filled with thoughts like, yeah, I shouldn't go. And I told them, I think, gosh, thank you guys for bearing with me. I know how much of a pain in the ass I can be sometimes. And I was definitely. And so I made myself a plan. I was like, okay, so I'm going to have to wake up at 4 a.m. to get everything done before we go to the beach at 2 p.m., which is crazy, right? But I actually did get all the things that I wanted to done. But I remember during our hangout, I was just thinking about, if I were home right now, I could be practicing. Because I don't think I finished everything in the morning. Because, really, how can you do a full day at work in 6 hours? That's not really realistic. And that's what I'm coming to realize now is that not every day is going to be 100%. Some things you just can't force. That's not an excuse to be lazy. That's just a fact. Some things, some days you just can't force yourself to do anything. Do you know what I'm saying? Not anything is in like, I'm going to lay on bed all day, but anything is in like, even if I sit at the piano for 2 hours, some days, those 2 hours, even if I don't touch my phone, they're not going to be used to their 100% efficiency. Some days will. Some days I'll come out of that feeling like, oh my God, I got into such a state of flow. But other days I'm like, that was used 60% because my mind kept wandering and whatnot. But back then, those days on the beach or whatever, we plan anything during adventures, I'd just be like, yeah, guys, when are we gonna be done? With all due respect, when are we gonna be done? Because I still gotta do this, that, and this. And I think back then, what it really was is I had trouble letting go. And sometimes I would sacrifice my sleep for a lot of things. What back then was really a big issue of mine, I guess, is bedtime procrastination. I think there's a term in it for it. I just don't remember what it is. But basically, I'd be laying in my bed, right, procrastinating. Funny. I'd be laying in my bed at like 10 p.m., saying to myself, okay, I got to practice piano for an hour or 2 hours. It was probably 2 hours back then because I was a little bit crazy in the best way possible. I'm grateful that Vera existed for this Vera to exist right now. So I'd be like, yeah, I got to play piano. But I just wouldn't get off my phone. I felt like I had no energy to do that. I just wouldn't get off my phone. And then at the end of the day, most cases, I wouldn't end up playing piano. I would just end up taking away 2 hours of sleep. Bedtime procrastination. Right now, what I've learned is some days I finish. This is not to say that I am not lazy now. Some days, of course, I am. Some moments, of course, I am. Laziness, it's a very natural human trait. And if anyone tells you they're not lazy, at some points in their lives, they're lying. Or they're just not self-aware yet. And that's fine. That comes with time. But now I know that if it's past 10 p.m., I most likely don't have the energy to do it. I could force myself, I think. But if I'm like, I haven't finished piano and I track myself and I notice myself going on my phone to procrastinate, I'm like, listen, Vera, I'm being honest with myself right now. I'm probably not going to do it. So I go to sleep. And I would not have done it anyway. Unless my willpower, would have shined through and came through. But it hasn't, And I just know myself better now. And I don't think that's an excuse. I think that just comes with time, like a realization sort of thing. So yeah, back then I was driven by guilt in a lot of moments. And I don't know, I remember if I did miss a day of practicing or whatever, because I was so driven by perfection, and perfection was it wasn't even an ideal, it was the standard. I expected myself to be literally perfect. And back then, like I'm already telling you, I was very happy and I was very fulfilled. And I was like, yeah, I'm really working my butt off, generally. But in those moments when perfection was what I held myself up to, the days that I would miss practice, I would feel a terrible, terrible guilt. But now I think what's changing is that my accent, it's not on self-development as much anymore as it is on individualism. And I think, listen, self-development, individualism, they go hand in hand. First is the self-development, then is the individualism. But as one kind of explores itself, as one field thrives, the other one has to, hand in hand. That's how it works. That's my personal philosophy. Maybe I'll develop a philosophical theory if I have nothing better to do. Oh gosh, that sounded very condescending. I'm sorry. My apologies. I don't know why I felt the need to say that, but I just did. Okay, but back then what I was doing is paving way for individualism, right? And this is how it works. I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm working on my first song, and I'm going to be releasing it soon. And I know I say this in every podcast episode, and I know some of you listening right now are just dying to hear it. Same. I'm dying to share it just as much. I'm super excited. It's going to be great. We are working this week on the music video, and it's just, I love it. It's coming and stemming from my subjective bias, but I absolutely love my song, and it's a work of art, and I'm just so excited to share it. So I'm working on my song, right? My song relates more to individualism rather than self-development, right? Because I think individualism, what it means to me is it directly relates to self-expression. What does it mean to be an individual, right? I think it's being solid in your individuality, that you're able to self-express yourself in a multitude of areas. Self-expression. So for self-development part of it, I would not be able to create my song or to write it or anything had I not put in the literal hundreds of hours into music, if not thousands. I don't know. I don't keep track like this. Probably should. I just wouldn't be able to do it. So self-development is discipline and whatnot. Individualism is self-expression and creativity. But once again, they go hand in hand. Even when I was practicing, just straight up, right? I wasn't practicing for the sake of practicing. This is important to realize. So sometimes right now I ask myself, why do I practice, right? And I know that because if for some reason I'm missing piano practice, which I'll be honest with you, I've been doing quite a bit recently. I've not been consistent with piano at all. Not at all. And I think this would have been me right now with the missing piano practice. It would have been my biggest fear 6 months ago. I would have literally cried, or maybe 8 months ago. Think like summer or May, April 2021. I would have cried. I would have been like, Vera, you are letting yourself go. Maybe I am, but I'm sharing the things I learned along the way with you because I think they're helpful to someone out there. Why not? I'm a creator. I create. Anyway, so working on my song. Discipline, self-development, creativity, individualism, and self-expression, they're all into one. So for my song right now, what I'm really exploring is the individualism part of myself, right? Right. And that's not to say that I don't practice. I need to. I gotta. But then, right now, I think what I was trying to say all along is that back then, if I were to miss a piano practice, I would feel guilt. And I think that's not right. That's not right at all, because I think it goes deeper than this. You have to really ask yourself, and that's what I tell myself, why do you practice? Now I realize that if I miss practice, if I don't practice that day or for that week, like I've been doing recently with piano, for example, I know that I'm just not allowing myself to get better. I'm not giving myself the opportunity because I'm willfully choosing not to practice. But back then, it would just been like, I feel guilty because I'm not maximizing my time. Right now I feel like I just have a more clear idea of how one thing leads to another, and that's important. But like I said, with working on my first song, it's emotionally exhausting. And I think a person, it's kind of like, why? Just a song. It's 3 minutes or however long. I think mine is exactly 3 minutes. It's just funny. I guess we'll see after I get the final mix. You may ask yourself, or me, how is that exhausting? It's 3 minutes of your work, right? But it is a work of art. And for my first song, I'm going to release it soon. Or if you're listening to this months from now, it's probably been released. It's going to come out in the next 2 months or less, which is really exciting. But it's so raw and it's so authentic and it is literally so emotional. After I recorded my final take, I was standing there. My knees were buckling. My muscles were spasming. And sweat was dripping down my legs and my arms. It was dripping down everywhere because I just gave a performance. And my song is one take, by the way. It's one take. I gave a performance. That's emotionally exhausting. And after that, I gave that performance, the final recording of it, it was, I think, less than a week ago, so several days ago. After that, for 3 or 4 days, I just didn't practice anything music related. I just felt like I couldn't. It felt like I couldn't force myself. I probably could, right? And I chose not to. So decide for yourself if that was laziness or whatnot, but how I interpreted it is I was just done. Not burnt out in a sense, because I didn't feel like sick of it, but I caught myself with a thought, if I were to never play music again, I wouldn't be mad about it. That's dangerous, because I'm tying my life to music. I love music so much with my whole being. And I know that wasn't me. That was just the emotionally exhausted me. And so my realization now was slowing down. It's also important to take breaks. And once again, if you would have told me this 8 months ago, 6 months ago, I would have looked at you straight, laughed in your face. Just kidding. That was not rude. I would have looked at you. I would have nodded, been like, okay, interesting. I appreciate your perspective. And I would not have done that. Back then, I did not take breaks. And I mean that. I just didn't. I don't know why. Some people would ask me, like, are you a robot? And I'd be so confused about that. I'd just be like, no, I'm a normal person. What do you mean? But back then, thinking about it, I kind of was a robot. Kind of. I did have my moments, of course. But for the most part, girl, she was grinding and hustling 24/7. 24/7. But then again, that was the self-development part. Now it's the individualism part. And obviously, I still have to self-development. And I don't plan on ever stopping self-developing for as long as I live, because it's a core ideal that I have. And I'm glad that I figured it out when I was young. I'm probably going to hold it for literally the rest of my life and pass it on to my, offspring, right? But a question that I ask myself now is, why do I hustle? Why do I work, right? And so back then, once again, with music practice, why do I practice music? It's to create art. It's to create art. Why do I practice music? To create art. Why do I study? I don't know. I don't study anymore. Not formally. To attain a bachelor's degree? I don't know why people study. Let me know why you study. But it's why do I practice the art technique? So I'll be able to create pieces where I fill out my full potential in art, It's that sort of thing. And so right now, what I'll say is that upon slowing down, I think I'm just living more. I'm just living more. Because back then, I was practicing for the sake of practicing, pretty much, right? And I've already told you that I just felt guilty when I didn't. But now I realize that as an artist, as a creator, and I just know that's who I am. I create, If I could do just one thing in life, it would be to create, because it's pretty much all I do. In various platforms, various mediums, podcasts, right? Stories on Instagram, posts, reels, music, literal art. I'm also into stitching now. Stitch. I stitch. I create. I'm a creator at heart and by nature. So why do I practice? It's to create. Why do I live? To live, right? But if I don't live, then I'm not going to be able to create, and I'm not going to be able to, share my art. Which at the end of the day, any artist, if you're an artist, you can agree with me. What's the point of creating if you're not going to share your art just for yourself? Sure, in certain areas. But if you define yourself to be a creator, then the whole point is to share. You know what I'm saying? Do we understand each other? I hope so. I hope we do. So right now, I recently, literally January, it's been 2 months, almost 3. No, it's been 2 months into 2022. Sorry, getting lost of time. 2 months into 2022. In January, I've taken a road trip to Utah. And I have an episode on this. It's called What I Learned During 11 Hours in the Car, or something along the lines of. And back then, old me, if I would have told myself, like, you're going on a road trip for 11 hours, I would have not gone, because it's a waste of time. That was my logic back then. Like, sitting in a car is a waste of time. But I'll tell you this right now. When I was on that road trip, and I was in the car for 11 hours, with maybe 2 stops or so, I have learned so much, and I've gained so much perspective and insight. And during that road trip as well, my logic back then was definitely like, what's the point of going anywhere? Like, I'd rather miss out on this to practice piano. Even though, obviously, I did appreciate, going out of my typical bubble. But back then, it just wasn't that important. But now on the road trip to Utah, I wrote so many poems. Literally so many poems. And even if that hadn't directly contributed to my art as a singer-songwriter or whoever it is that I am, even if I hadn't created any content, that still would not have been a waste of time, because it did enrich my life and my life experiences. And on that topic, I know that me and some people listening right now, that are in my family, we're going to have differing opinions on that. And I'm fine with that. I'm growing up. I'm changing. I'm slowing down or speeding up, whatever. I'm changing. I'm holding my own views. I'm not listening to everybody else as much, trying to form my own. Mine already kind of formed. And I'm open to interpretation. No, I'm open to expanding my views and my stances on philosophical topics. But mine are already solidifying. And so I think contributing to life experiences, works of art can do that. Shows, movies can do that. Books can do that. Obviously, reality TV, I'll admit this. I watch some reality TV. I love, I can't think of any single one. Love is Blind. That was a fun show. I do watch it. Does that expand my horizons? Well, not really. Maybe in a super indirect way, where one thing reminds me of another, but not really. But I just remember watching Euphoria, right? And that's a TV show. I don't really like it anymore, to be honest. It's getting kind of boring. I still watch it, but it's just Watching that at first, I felt like it just opened my mind. I was like, oh my gosh, this is also obviously TV show lifestyle, but that's also a lifestyle that people possess. And I didn't really think about it like that. You know what I mean? Did I need to watch 2 seasons to figure that out? No, I knew that from the first episode. So I kept watching for entertainment, obviously. But with books, it's definitely a more direct tie to self-development whilst expanding the horizons. Because I remember, and I've talked about this in what I read in January 2022 video, I got to get back into reading. I haven't been reading as much, I'll be honest. I read Stoner by John Williams, and I just realized that a simple life is also life, you know? It's this guy, William Stoner, who just, he went to university and he stayed a professor, and that was practically his life. Like, he had a wife and a kid in process, and that's it. That's it. That was his life. You know, you could summarize that in 3 seconds, but that's his life. Interesting, right? And it was still complex in its own way, but that definitely expanded my horizons to things. So back then, I remember I was telling myself, because perfection was my standard, not even the ideal, it was just my standard. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not watching Netflix or whatever, rots my brain. Does it? I think for the most part, yeah, I'll be honest. I watched a lot of movies just so I don't have to think about anything. Not a lot, but I watch a lot of the movies I watch, they're really bad. They don't really expand my horizons in that way. But the good works of art that I consume, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, that's a wonderful film. It inspires everything else. It inspires a lot of other things, like my music video for my song. And you can watch it if you're listening to this 2 months from now or so. Huh? But if you're watching this or listening to it real time, then just give it a second. And regarding slowing down, I think it's just important to keep moving. Because if we go back, this is kind of all over the place, but I like it like that. If we go back to when I was talking about working my first song and feeling just really emotionally exhausted after, I did not do anything for the 3 days after that, you know? I still did things. And that's actually when I picked up stitching. So I've been stitching for, 2 days now, I think, which is really fun. I love stitching. But it's such a slow and almost, what's that word? It's almost a tedious activity, right? Because it's so minuscule and it takes literally forever. People who stitch fast, hey, I'll take a lesson from you because I need all the help I can get. But I don't do that. I'm really slow with stitching. That's a hobby I picked up, and it's very slow and it's tedious and it's very minuscule. Would I have done that 6 months ago? No. But guess what? That's character development. That is character development. Back then, I was so almost afraid to even watch movies because it was a waste of time. So I would do art simultaneously, which is a good technique. Right now, I just stitch instead of that. You know what I mean? So yeah, things have changed. Times have changed. I think I covered everything pretty much that I wanted to talk about. Thank you for listening. So I think what's the most important to realize in life, and I want you to listen closely, is that it oscillates. So when I did come downstairs and my dad told me, your lifestyle really did slow down. That's natural. And it's going to speed back up at some point. Am I waiting for it to speed back up? Well, not really. Kind of, because we already discussed this. It's not perfect right now. I do feel restless at times, and I just want a place to go to every day or so, just to get out of the house a little bit more. Because I can't hang out with my friends and family on the weekends, pretty much. That's pretty much it. But it oscillates. That's how life is. It has its phases and its ups and its downs, and the time periods where things are just a little bit slower, and time periods where they're going so fast you literally cannot take a breath. And by the way, I really love those especially. I can't wait for my life to just pick up that pace again. And at some point it will. But I think what I realized is that I can't really force it. I can't really force it. Because as humans, we are lazy. For the most part, we are. Because if you think about this, you can pick up playing the violin, right? And you can play for 7 years. But if you stop at some point, what's going to do? What's going to happen to your body? It's going to slowly but surely unlearn how to play the violin. And if you stop, if you've been playing for 7 years straight every single day, you stop for 7 years. So in 14 years from the point when you started, would you still be able to play something? Sure. But would your skill level have stayed the same? No, absolutely not. And I know that for a fact. Our body always wants to go back to its natural starting position. And so self-development, it's kind of like a battle with yourself almost. It's for the best of yourself. And it's a lot of times it's tough love. It's making yourself do stuff when you don't want to. And that's something I gotta get back into, because I've not been doing that as much. I've not been overcoming myself as much. And I'm just being honest with myself. And that I'm not attaching a negative connotation to it. And I think that's also important. So point is, life has its different phases and whatnot. But what's most important is just to appreciate each and every single one of them. Right now, my life's now slowing down because there is no direct motivation for it to speed up. I'm out of school. I don't have that responsibility anymore, right? And for some people, there's like David Goggins. That man's crazy. I appreciate him so much, and I have so much respect for him. But he, in my position, he probably would be able to, I don't know, fill up his schedule for like 14 hours every single day, just full no breaks. He'd be able to do that. I can't, and I'm working on it, right? But at this point, I just can't. There's no direct motivation for me to do so. So quite frankly, I'm enjoying my lifestyle slowing down to a certain extent, because I already talked about this. I do feel a little bit restless sometimes. So that is it. I'm out. Oh, gosh, I love making podcast episodes. I haven't talked. I think it's been 2 weeks. So yeah, thank you for listening. I love you so much. Literally with all my heart. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate the fact that I appreciate you. Let's be honest. I appreciate you. Let me know what you think of this episode. Give it a rating and a review. I'll appreciate you. And stay tuned for my first song. I'm super excited. Okay. Bye-bye. Hugs and kisses.